Hi, fashionpreneurs. I'm Anna Livermore from V.Mora, where we help launch fashion designers start to finish. I've been doing this for 15 years, so I come across the same questions all the time. All of the designers tend to have the same types of issues come up over and over. So today we're going to talk about costing and making sure that you're pricing your product properly. Independent designers are always afraid to price their products where they need to be in order to make a profit. And I have to remind them, like, if you're not making a profit, if you're not supporting yourself and sustaining your business, what are you doing? Like, you don't want to be paying people to be buying your product. You don't want to be paying stores to sell your product. You need to make a profit in order to stay in business. So don't be afraid to price your product where it needs to be priced in order for you to do that. In this video, I'm going to talk about working backwards, starting in a retail price and working backwards to what the COGS should be and what the profit margins need to look like in order for you to be successful. The first thing you want to do, stop comparing yourself to brands like Shein or The Gap or H&M or any of these brands that have unlimited, like they're making so many units, they can literally dream up anything and get it at a very low price. Whereas as an independent designer, you're limited to what you can find in small minimums. In the fabrics that you need to buy, say you want 5 yards to make sampling and you'll need 100 yards for production. You are going to be limited around what is readily available in those smaller minimums, whereas these larger brands can just make whatever they want. And also making 1,000 units, 10,000 units, 100,000 units, their price point is going to be much, much lower. So when you're looking to compare yourself to a brand, make sure that if you're going to be made in the United States, that brand is also made in the United States. If you're going to be, making smaller minimums, you want to find other independent designers or brands that started out independent and now have grown, but you need to compare your financial structure to these competitors as well, and know that those bigger brands, the H&Ms, the Sheins, those Forever 21s, like, you don't want to be competing with those brands. Those brands are just about price. So the consumers, the customers of those brands are specifically looking for a cheap, low-priced garment. And as an independent designer, that should not be your goal, to have a cheap, low-priced garment. You'll need to focus on sustainability and where your product is made and quality. You'll want to attract your customers, not just for your price, but for what you're offering, whether it's unique designs or high quality, nice fabrics. Whatever that looks like, your number one attraction to your customers shouldn't be, oh, it's a low price. A lot of my designers are having a lot of luck with pre-orders and small batch production. And why that works is, with pre-orders, you are having a promised sale. So you're not producing production out of nowhere, and they're getting that price up front. So they're pre-selling, the customers are purchasing, and then they're using that money from that purchase to make the production, which is genius, right? The money then doesn't have to come out of your own pocket, and you have the sale. That's an amazing way to support and pay for that first initial production run. And then the second one is in the small batch production. Why this is helpful is you are able to keep yourself really, really lean in what you're spending in production and sell that little production and then reinvest and make a second larger production with the exact numbers and the exact feedback from the customers that are buying your product. And buying your product, I want to stress, because you can ask everyone under the sun, like, hey, if you were going to buy this, would it be red or would it be blue? Would it be this or would it be that? And like, everyone will give you their opinion. But those people aren't necessarily the same people that are purchasing your product. You will not get a better case study than when you have a small production to sell to your customer. You are finding out what size your customer is, what colors they like. They may say, like, up and down. They love the hot pink floral. Oh my God, it's beautiful. I love it. I love it. I love it. Love it. Love it. And black is your number one seller. And you'll find that out once you're selling. So as much as you want to predict and as much as you want, you can hire companies and do surveys and do your market research. And it's ultimately a guess until you have that small batch production. So making a small batch production, not biting off more than you can chew, and then reinvesting the money from the sales to make a second production. It'll be a lot more profitable and you'll be able to use that money to reinvest so that money doesn't have to come out of your pocket. When you're doing a small batch production, there's also a sense of urgency. So you can tell your customers, like, hey, I only made 100 of each of these units. When they're gone, we will be recutting, but I don't know when that's going to be. So it also gives that sense of urgency for them to buy now instead of like waiting 6 months or like, I don't need it now, or we'll see what happens. Like creating that sense of urgency can only work in your favor. So if you're producing in the US right now, I'm going to run you through a little pricing structure of what it should look like, including your overhead, your COGS, your labor, your profit margins, all so that it works out in your favor and that you're making sure that everything that you put into this product is being paid for and you're pricing yourself accurately. When you're producing domestically, you also like the storytelling on that is very, very important because it is going to be more expensive than those brands that are producing in China or in other countries. However, if you tell this story and you tell the customer why it's important and you bring them behind the scenes into the factories and you're able to shoot videos and like tell them exactly what, I'm making this in Philadelphia and my factory owner has 3 kids. And, telling that story to your customer is really important and they love to hear it. It helps enhance your brand identity. And it also justifies that price point being a little bit higher than if it was made in China. Local first is becoming a really smart brand strategy. Right now, the tariffs are all over the place, and shipping by sea is so expensive. So a lot of the factories are now pushing clients to be shipping by boat because it's less expensive, because by sea, coupled with the tariffs, outprice those garments. Whereas, if you're shipping by boat, you can still kind of have more wiggle room if you are used to that shipping by sea price. However, the shipping by boat can take up to 90 days. So if you've got to be really planning far ahead of time and able to be shipping by sea. Whereas if you're producing locally, it'll cut the time into a third at least. So the turnaround time is a lot faster. The shipping time is way faster. You don't have to worry about those tariffs or duties. So a lot of brands, bigger brands and new brands are really looking at doing things locally versus offshoring or even nearshoring things to save on time and the tariffs and the duties. Another thing that I wanted to touch on is as a new brand, it's really, really important not to spread yourself too thin. You don't want to confuse your customer. So you don't want to come out with 12, 18 pieces and have this gigantic collection because the buyer is going to look at you and be like, well, who are you? Are you a jacket designer? Are you a denim designer? Because a lot of times designers will say like, I want to offer everything: pants, tops, button-ups, jackets, t-shirts. Like I want to do the full wardrobe. And really, if you think about brands, they usually start out as we do pants, we do button-ups, we do tops. So you want to have a very, very niche audience so they know if they're looking for a jacket, they know to come to you. If they're looking for a button up, they're like, yeah, I love those button ups. I'm going to go back to that designer. So figuring out who you are and what your brand identity is going to be and your brand ID of what you're going to be offering. You might not know specifically what that is, but if you kind of like go within and see like what pieces are you most passionate about? What pieces are you most excited to be wearing? Usually, those are the pieces you should be focusing on. And it saves so much on development costs. Development costs are a lot. You got your pattern, you've got your sample, you've got to do a fitting, you've got to digitize, you've got to grade that pattern, then you've got to do your size check run. So, development fees, it costs money, and there is no real ways to kind of skip that because what you're risking is a production that doesn't fit and it's not worth it. So the development fees for each style is quite expensive. So you want to get ahead of that and A, make a budget. I always say make a budget, but B, doing a smaller collection, you need 3 to 4 to 5 really great designs versus having 12, 18 pieces. It's very hard financially to keep up with that. And then at the end of the day, it also can confuse your consumer if they don't know who you are or if you're spread too thin. So being able to figure that out and do like a really tight collection will only benefit you in the long run. I want to talk a little bit about retail versus direct to customer. It used to be, gosh, 20 years ago, all designers just sold to retail. That was, they didn't have access to direct to customer. If you didn't have a storefront, you didn't have access to that designer. Well, now we have the internet, right? And you can have a website and you can sell directly on your website to the customers. And what is magical there is you're getting that retail price versus when you're selling to that boutique or that third party, you're only getting a wholesale price. And with what your margin looks like, you want to make sure that you're not losing money at a wholesale price, but it's not going to be nearly as profitable as that direct to customer price, right? So nowadays, having your wholesale accounts are more like a paid advertisement. Like, oh, I can say that I'm selling in Bergdorf. Oh, I can say that I'm selling in Bergdorf's, or I can say that I'm selling at these really cool boutiques in LA or in Soho or whatever that looks like. It's more of like a clout for your brand to say that you're selling in these stores because then in your customers' eyes, if they know that store, they know that you then are fitting properly, delivering properly. Like it gives your brand a stamp of approval. However, it's not going to be that profitable to do only wholesale as it was back 20 years ago. Now, because you do have the access to go direct to customer, and you'll get that wholesale or that retail price. It's also a lot faster when you're selling to direct to customer. So you're able to put it online and sell and get that price immediately. When you're selling wholesale, often those windows are 6 months in advance. So they'll purchase your items in February for the fall, but they're not going to actually pay until you ship. So you've got to produce all of those garments and then you're not going to get paid until you ship. And unfortunately, with the way the retail world looks like, if it's not an established storefront, like it might be closed by the time you go to deliver and they might, not follow through on the order. So it's challenging. The wholesale is presents a lot more challenges than it does direct to customer. Wholesaling is presents a lot more challenges and it's not as profitable, whereas direct to consumer is quicker. You're able to get paid immediately and you will learn faster what sizes they like, what colors they're looking for. So there's definitely a lot of advantages to direct to consumer versus the wholesale accounts. So your cost for your garment doesn't matter as much without the context. What you want to sell to your customer is value. You'll want to make sure that they understand what goes into the product and that they're not necessarily coming to you just for the best price. As an independent designer, as I talked before, like it's going to be really hard for you to be as competitive with the brands that are doing those larger minimums. So What you want to focus on is the value that you're offering, the quality that you're offering. Maybe it's customer service that's just going to be amazing. You want to focus on the other things that you can offer your customer that isn't necessarily the lowest price possible. So you don't want to obsess so much about your pricing. You want to obsess about the customer experience and why you're going to justify that price to every single customer that purchases your garments. When you're working offshore, the tariffs, shipping dramas, it's like it's a little bit out of your control, right? Because it's not right here. You're not able to just go and show up at the factory and fix a problem. Like you're dealing with, time zones. So like I'll email my factories in China and then they email me back in the middle of the night and then I email them back and then so it's like a 24-hour turnaround even in our communication unless I want to be up in the middle of the night, which sometimes I am. Anyways, so it's a lot more complicated when you're working far away versus if you're working locally and you're able to problem solve and check quality and be on the production floor. Like there's so many things that benefit you as a designer when you have access to your factory. And obviously, right now, with the tariffs, it's just like total chaos. I can't even tell, like, if I were to say what the tariffs are right now in this moment, by the time we posted the video, it would change. So we don't even know what's going on. It changes every day. But if you're working domestically, we know that that's stable and we know that the price for the labor will stay the same, which is key when you're doing your costing, right? Your brand story is going to be your biggest competitive advantage. Fast fashion can copy your product, but not your purpose. You want to be able to learn your identity, your brand story. Why are you doing this? And then share that with your customer so that they can understand the value of what you're providing and really get to know you and buy you, not just a clothing line. They're going to buy you as the brand owner. Great brands are built on meaning, not on margins. Your background, your process is unique to you. No one else can copy that. So when it comes to placing yourself in the market, you want to show what makes you and your brand unique. Sharing your journey also creates trust and reliability. People get to know you and they'll come back because they want to help support you and your brand, your designs. You want to use your story to justify your price and to attract your customers and even media. Well, there you have it. I hope that today's video helped you realize that it's not all about that price. There are so many other things as an independent designer that you want to offer your customer. You want to make sure that you let that shine. If you're interested in booking a strategy session with me, you can click the link below, and I look forward to hearing from you.